The Renaissance gave us Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Machiavelli. It was an age of unparalleled genius, a rebirth of art and humanism, but behind every masterpiece there was a war. What if I told you that the very same Italy that gave birth to this explosion of brilliance was ultimately consumed and destroyed by its own political chaos? The story of the Renaissance isn't just one of beauty and intellect. It's a story of conflict, invasion, and survival. Welcome to Neo Historica A.I., where we uncover how history's greatest moments were often born from its darkest conflicts. Today, we journey back to Renaissance Italy, a dazzling world where genius thrived and empires clashed. This is the story of the Italian Wars, the devastating conflicts that brought an end to an age of brilliance but paradoxically spread its light across the world. To understand why the Renaissance ended so violently, you have to understand that 15th century Italy wasn't one unified nation. It was a chaotic, competitive chessboard of powerful city-states. Imagine Florence, the cradle of art under the Medici; Venice, the maritime republic commanding a vast trading empire; Milan, a military powerhouse ruled by the Sforza dukes; Naples, a kingdom with ancient claims; and the Papal States, controlled by a pope who was as much a prince as a pontiff. Each city-state had its own army, its own web of fragile alliances, and its own burning ambitions. They were in a state of constant competition, a delicate balance of power that could shatter at any moment. While Florence was busy sponsoring breathtaking art and groundbreaking philosophy, Milan was building impenetrable fortresses. This internal division, this relentless rivalry, made Italy incredibly wealthy and culturally vibrant. But it also made it vulnerable. Its immense riches and strategic location in the Mediterranean attracted the envy of Europe's rising monarchies, and that envy would soon bring disaster right to its doorstep. The storm finally broke in 1494. King Charles VIII of France, with a claim to the throne of Naples, marched his army across the Alps. This was no ordinary army. It was a modern, professional force equipped with a fearsome new weapon, mobile siege artillery. These cannons could batter down medieval walls in a matter of hours, something the Italian city-states, who still relied on hired mercenary captains called *condottieri*, were completely unprepared for. The French advance was shockingly swift. Cities that had resisted sieges for months in the past now surrendered one by one. The illusion of Italian military strength was shattered overnight. This invasion triggered what became known as the Italian Wars, a brutal, 65-year struggle that transformed Italy into the primary battlefield of Europe. It wasn't just Italy's problem anymore. Soon the great powers of the age, France, Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, and even the Ottoman Turks were all drawn into the vortex, fighting for control of the wealthy Italian peninsula. The beautiful garden of the Renaissance was about to be trampled by the boots of foreign armies. As Italy burned, its sharpest minds watched in horror and fascination. One of these observers was a Florentine diplomat named Niccolò Machiavelli. Forced out of politics, he channeled his bitter experience into one of the most influential and controversial books ever written, The Prince*. This wasn't a philosophical treatise on ideal republics. It was a cold, brutally realistic guide to acquiring and holding power in a world governed by force and deception. Machiavelli had witnessed firsthand the failure of Italy's leaders. He saw how their reliance on mercenaries, their endless infighting, and their political naivety had led directly to their ruin. He concluded that Italy's downfall came not from a weakness of art or culture, but from a fatal lack of political unity and military strength. To survive, a ruler needed to be as cunning as a fox and as fierce as a lion. Morality was a luxury one couldn't always afford. His words were a chilling diagnosis of Italy's sickness and a stark warning to future generations. Beauty, wealth, and culture are meaningless if you don't have the strength to defend them. The symbolic death blow to the high Renaissance came in 1527 in a shocking turn of events. The unpaid and mutinous army of the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, a mix of Spanish Catholics and German Protestant mercenaries, marched on Rome. For over a week, the Eternal City, the heart of Christendom, was subjected to a horrifying sack. The city burned. Palaces and churches were looted, priceless artworks were destroyed or stolen. Nuns were violated and priests were murdered at the altar. The scale of the brutality shocked all of Europe. It was more than just a military event. It was a cultural and psychological catastrophe. The sack of Rome marked the definitive, symbolic end of the Renaissance's optimism and innocence. The dream of a new golden age, led by a flourishing and independent Italy, was over. The future belonged not to artists and humanists, but to powerful emperors and kings. The era of vibrant city-states gave way to centuries of foreign domination. So the Italian wars destroyed the Renaissance, right? Well, it's not that simple. History is full of irony. Though Italy itself fell under the shadow of Spanish and Habsburg rule for centuries, the wars had an unintended consequence. They helped spread the Renaissance across the entire continent. As soldiers marched back and forth across Italy, they were exposed to its art, architecture, and ideas. They took stories of its wonders back home. More importantly, as Italy became a war zone, its greatest minds began to flee. Artists, architects, scholars, and engineers sought patronage and safety in the courts of France, Spain, and England. Leonardo da Vinci himself spent his final years in France under the patronage of the king. Benvenuto Cellini worked in Paris. This diaspora of talent transplanted the seeds of the Renaissance across Europe. The very wars that crushed Italy's independence ensured that its cultural legacy would not die, but would instead blossom in new lands, helping to shape the future of Western civilization. The Renaissance wasn't just an idyllic period of artistic creation. It was an age defined by the struggle for survival. The sublime beauty of Florence, the transcendent genius of Leonardo, and the cold-eyed realism of Machiavelli were all forged in the crucible of conflict. The Italian wars teach us a powerful lesson. Creation and destruction are often two sides of the same coin. The forces that tear down one world can inadvertently build another. History reminds us that even in chaos and destruction, the human spirit finds a way to create, to adapt, and to endure. If you love these deep dives into the complex forces that shape our world, where art, power, and conflict collide, then make sure to subscribe to Neo Historica A.I. and hit that notification bell. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you in the next chapter of history.